Now I'm just going to quickly as I can, show you how I have scissored the MCC on Oscar, and pretty much I did the same thing on Gustav. Just a note, he's had a month worth, well, almost 5 weeks worth of growth since the last time I showed him. So his hair is really long. And the other thing to note is I haven't washed him since the last show either. So he isn't dirty. It's not like we're in the dirt or stuff much. And typically what I would do would shave everything. You know, I did his face and feet on Sunday. But I would typically shave everything one night, and then the next night, because I have a full-time job during the day, the next day I would go through and wash and dry and then start scissoring. And it definitely is much easier to scissor when you have, I know, now he's gonna be all giddy about his rear. It's definitely easier to scissor a clean coat, but for the fact that as soon as we're done with this, I'm gonna shave it off. I'm not gonna spend 2 hours bathing and drying. So this is a dirty coat. So when I talked about shaving, and two, the other reason I split it up is because if I shave one night, then this whole, oh my gosh, my rear end is naked, he kind of gets over himself by the next day. So when I am looking at lines, when I shaved, again, I shaved right above the elbow. So if you can, probably hard to see on the live stream, sorry about that, but here's his elbow. His elbow is right here, or maybe easier to see kind of where the camera is. So I've shaven right above that. Make sure everything's kind of all fluffed out as good as it can be. And then what I do, I take my straights, and yes, I have very long, obnoxious, crisp, kind of hard to see them, they're purple, Christensen straights. So I take those, and what I want to do is lay it right above that elbow, and I'm going to cut. And I cut kind of my line back. So this is how I set the bottom. And for me, the best way I found to groom is I groom from the bottom up, is how I groom in his jacket. So again, kind of keep fluffing it out. So I'll set in this line, make sure I have as crisp a line as I can get. And then what I do is kind of pick up his front leg, and then I scissor. Some other people will take a 4-blade or a long blade and shave like just a line down the middle here, kind of where the rib cage comes together. They'll shave it down. I get a little too eager with a clipper, so I'd rather scissor it. So I'll flipper this, do this down. Come here, Oscar, stand up. And then what I'm going to do is, again, he has a lot of hair to come off because it's been a month. But then what I would do is make sure he's standing, be comfortable, buddy. I will then take my curves, and I have long, crazy curves, and I will take these, and then I start curving up. So from the bottom, and I'll come across. And again, no more shows, so this isn't going to be as smooth and elegant as a show clip would be. But, you know, I'll kind of come through, and since he has so much coat, I can really whack it off pretty quickly. And then you can even take your curves and kind of clean up this underbelly. But again, I look at the jacket as a teardrop. So here is like the big bulb of the teardrop, and then it kind of comes back. So when I'm looking at him, when I would get done, I would look and go, do I taper back into him? So he doesn't look like just a big mop of hair coming and going. But that's, you know, kind of, you know, what I would do is just take this third. Now be careful when you start getting to the top line up here, because again, this is the hardest part of this clip, is making sure you have this top line that kind of comes up and it scoops up. And I look at it kind of as sort of like a number 2, right? So 2, you would go like this to write a number 2. And if you look, when this is fluffed up fairly decently, you have your curve, your swoop. And this kind of swoop up the neck is that most difficult part to do, because you got to have the neck hair to do it. So hold on, Oscar. So again, this video is going to be just a tad bit longer than the last one. So, you know, you want to kind of, for him, let's just get some hair off. And then I'm going to scooch around to the other side. You know, this is where the art and the sculpting comes in, because then, you know, you would spend hours trying to make sure this all comes in together. And right now, that's not what's going to be happening. So the other thing I'll do is take my straights, come down the back edge of the jacket, and clean up that jacket line. So now we have a much crisper, nicer jacket line. So I'm gonna do, you can't really see it, but I'm gonna do the same over here. And on the other side, I'm gonna go above his elbow, go straight back. And scissor, be careful you don't get any flesh in it, especially, you know, nipples on the girls. So you do kind of have to watch what you do, and that might be one reason to keep, use a 4-blade instead of scissors. But I'm gonna scissor up to him. If any of you have seen him at the shows and you felt, I scissor as close up as I can. There's no hair on his bottom. I know, bud. Being a very good boy. So I could obsess over this for a long time. And then I also want to clean it up back here in the back area. I want to make sure that it's nice and clean, that there's not a whole lot hanging down. And that would be how we would do this. And then just continue up with the curves, or if you have a good finishing scissors, like these are an Artero 7.5-inch finishing scissor, you can take these and then really kind of go down and smooth in all those scissor lines. So that's what I would do. But again, you want to scissor so you kind of get that teardrop taper to the back look. And right now, it's not going to look like it just because he does have so much hair, it's hard to do it. But, you know, I would keep just tapering it back and tapering it in. And then when I get a pretty good shape that I like and get kind of off a lot of this chunky stuff, find Oscar stand. I would take and do this and keep going. Now let's talk about the front. And you'll notice I don't put him in a neck rest. Sometimes I will. For me, it's just easier to hold him. He's just hot because my grooming room is my 1-car garage. And I have to admit, it's getting warm out here. And thank you to my friend Tanya for coming to help video, because hopefully we'll have a better produced video of this in the future to show you. So now let's look at his front. So his front, same thing again. What you'll notice is it got my lines above. And this part can be tricky. So here, one quick thing. After I shaved his face, I didn't trim this in, but you know, kind of taper this in. I usually cut it pretty flat and get off some of this extra neck hair. All right, so down here, one thing you want to make sure of is that you, and I know this because I do this way too often. I'll leave him heavy on the points of his front, so it'll look too square. So when you get this line set above here, everything should curve up and away from that line. So for instance, again, I'm going to take, you can take and either chunk off when you have this much hair. You can chunk it off with the straights, or take your scissors. And I always point the scissor up and kind of chop off that heaviness. And make sure you get, you know, a little bit behind the, you know, behind the elbow as well. I know. Hi, Oscar. And by the way, I do cheat and let him sit. Most people wouldn't let him sit, but what I find when they sit on the front is I can see naturally how his chest is curving up. And just make sure you don't cut too much that you end up with 2 lumps in between. Here, stand it. So again, take my curves. I'm going to go all the way around above his front legs. And keep on going. And then from there, Same thing as the sides. I would take and scissor upward and just taper it all into his neck. So again, you want a little bit of this to round it out, depending on what type of front your dog has. You know, if they have a pretty good front, you're gonna scissor pretty close to it because you don't want the judge thinking you have a bunch of hair there because your dog has a straight front. But if they have a good front, you know, scissor that stuff off, let it go. You know, let the dog be more sporty. The part about this trim that can be the most difficult, and turn around, buddy. That can be the most difficult is just keeping the balance. And by balance, it means if you have a lot of hair up here, you're gonna need more hair back there. So when I balance it, you know, it's gonna be, that's why I usually don't scissor here in just a matter of minutes. I will scissor over days and take a half hour, hour a day to do it. And then I'll come back to it and go, all right, he has too much on his front, like right here. This would be too much on the front, or he still has too much above his legs. So I'm gonna wanna keep tapering, taper into it. But I found that by going bottom up, that when I'm coming bottom up, I can create a better upward motion in the pattern versus going top down. I think here, let's look real quickly here for the neck and the ears. So up here, again, the best thing to do is take your curves and put them upside down. So the points are coming away from the dog, the points are coming towards you, and they'll keep you from kind of gouging into the coat. And I'll take them away, and then this is where I like to create a little bit of a kind of, I guess you can say a neck, but take that heaviness off the neck so they don't look like a, I hate to say it, like a lineman, a football lineman that's kind of jammed his head too many times. So you can do this anywhere if you're worried about gouging. Turn your curves upside down. And then what I do is I'm going to come down his kind of top line here where I stopped coming up, and then I'm going to try to blend this all in as good as I can. So again, blend, 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 blend. And again, we have a whole lot of hair going on here, so this makes it a little more difficult. And then, you know, I'm going to flip them around the other way. But as soon as I get to where I have my top line, right here down his back, I want to flip him over because I don't want to take that chance I'm going to gouge him. All right, so let's talk about the top line real quick. So this top line, the part to remember about this, and again, he hasn't had a bath, so things aren't going to fluff quite like they should. I want, remember, the number 2. So if I'm thinking the number 2, and it's a 2 here, and it kind of flans out at the very bottom. But I want a nice slope here, right? So if, what's the best way to kind of think about that? I just want this nice connection that when I'm looking at this, come here, Bella, that when I'm looking at this, that it goes smoothly up and over. And truly a lot of that can, you know, is just upside down curves. And this is where the art form comes in. You just have to slowly, buddy, stop. You know, you just have to slowly start curving it up. Here's where I will flip the scissors over, point down, and then kind of blend it back in. So once I have my curve, kind of this, I know, where he's hot. So once I kind of have this curve going up, sorry, stop looking, up the spine, upside down curves, you know, and this is where you're going to just slowly go. Slowly work into the head. Let me look. So I think for right now, this gives you an idea of how to get started on the jacket. Again, above the elbows, right? Above the elbow, and then everything curves up from there. Oscar, next time I'm going to put you in a headrest. And I just want to make sure that, you know, I keep everything coming up. I don't want points dropping down, bad habit of mine. I want this to all keep curving up and up and up, and then this to curve up and over the head. So behind the ears, I have to admit, this is the tricky part if someone has a deal. Make sure when you go behind the ears, it's okay, bud, that you don't cut in too close into here. You want to keep a little tiny bit of width. So don't go like way, way, way in. Let there be a little bit of hair, because that's what will help. Come on. I should put them in a headrest when I started, because this is what will help blend the head into it. All right, we're going to take a break and then we'll come back and show you the head.